Some stories aren't meant to be told, but this one needs to be heard. It started with something small, something almost unnoticeable, until it wasn't. Before we uncover the truth, make sure you're subscribed for more unforgettable stories. And if you enjoy mysterious twists, drop A in the comments. Here's what happened.
When you're told your entire existence serves a single purpose, the cruelest part isn't the burden itself. It's the moment you realize that purpose was never truly yours to fulfill. That's how Alara's story begins, not with the fairy tale wedding she'd imagined as a girl, but with 7 rings placed before her, and a curse that would consume them all if she chose wrong. The morning of choosing. They called it as if Alara had any choice at all. She stood in the grand hall of the Silvercrest estate, the ancestral home of the most powerful wolf pack in the Northern Territories, wearing a gown of white silk that felt more like a shroud than a wedding dress. 7 brothers stood before her in a perfect line, each more devastatingly handsome than the last, each bearing the unmistakable mark of the Alpha bloodline. Golden eyes that could pierce through lies, broad shoulders that carried the weight of their pack's expectations, and somewhere beneath all that masculine perfection, the curse that had slowly been killing them for the past 3 years. "Miss Alara Thorne," the High Priestess's voice echoed through the vaulted ceiling. "Do you understand what is required of you?" Alara's fingers trembled as they clutched the simple bouquet of winter roses her mother had picked that morning before the soldiers came, before her father had signed the contract in his own blood, before her younger sister Mira had whispered through tears that at least one of them would survive this nightmare their family had stumbled into. "I understand," Alara said, though her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. She understood perfectly. 3 years ago, the 7 Silvercrest brothers had been cursed by a scorned witch, each of them bound to the others in a chain of shared fate. If one died, they all died. If one went feral, they all lost their humanity. And the only way to break the curse was for all 7 to marry the same woman, a woman of pure heart and untainted bloodline, a woman who could somehow give her soul to all of them, while her body belonged to only one. The irony wasn't lost on Alara. She'd spent 22 years being completely unremarkable, too bookish for the wolves in her small village, too poor to attract wealthy suitors, too plain, her stepmother had always said, to hope for anything better than marrying a farmer and bearing his children until her body gave out. And now here she stood, the salvation for 7 alpha princes, chosen not for her beauty or her charm, but because an ancient bloodline test had revealed she was somehow compatible with their curse. Lucky her. "The ritual will proceed as follows," the High Priestess continued, her silver hair gleaming in the candlelight that filled the hall. Alara noticed there were no windows in this room, no natural light permitted to witness what was about to unfold. "You will marry all 7 brothers in a single ceremony, binding your life force to theirs. The curse will recognize the bond and begin to unravel, but it will not break completely until you choose your true mate, the one whose claim on you supersedes all others." The priestess's eyes, milky white with age and magic, somehow found Alara's face in the crowd of witnesses. "Only one brother can fully claim you, child. The others will remain bound to you in name and magic, but they can never consummate the bond. They will feel your every emotion, know your every thought, and they will spend the rest of their lives watching the brother you choose have what they can never possess." A murmur rippled through the assembled pack members. Alara's stomach twisted. No one had explained this part. No one had mentioned that choosing one meant torturing 6, that her decision would create 5 additional heartbreaks to carry for the rest of her life. "And if I can't choose?" Alara asked, the words escaping before she could stop them. The silence that fell was absolute. Even the candles seemed to stop flickering. "Then you will all die," said a voice from the line of brothers. The first brother stepped forward, and Alara's breath caught despite herself. He was tall, taller than seemed natural, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes that held ancient grief. "My name is Demon," he said, his voice like smoke and whiskey. "I'm the eldest. The curse started with me." He moved with predatory grace as he approached, and Alara fought the urge to step back. This close, she could see the silver scars that traced up his neck, disappearing beneath his formal collar. Battle scars, a warrior's marks. "I was arrogant," Demon continued, his golden eyes never leaving hers. "I rejected the witch's daughter when she offered herself to me. Told her no half-blood mongrel would ever be worthy of a Silvercrest Alpha. She cursed me to know exactly how it feels to be rejected by the one you desire most. His hand reached out, and Alara held perfectly still as his fingers brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch sent electricity racing down her spine. So here's your first truth, little bride. Whichever one of us you don't choose will spend eternity wanting you and never having you. The witch made sure her revenge would be poetic. Before Alara could respond, another brother stepped forward, physically inserting himself between Demon and her. This one had lighter hair, almost golden, and a smile that probably made hearts stop under normal circumstances. "Don't let Demon scare you," he said, though his eyes held their own warnings. "I'm Caspian, the second son, and unlike my dramatic brother, I'll be honest, we're not looking for love here. We're looking for survival. You do your duty, pick one of us, doesn't really matter who, and we all get to keep breathing. Simple transaction." The callousness in his tone stung more than Alara expected. She'd known this wasn't a love match, known she was essentially a magical tool to break their curse, but hearing it stated so baldly made something inside her chest go cold and hard. "Simple transaction," Alara repeated, her voice gaining strength she didn't know she possessed. "Is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night, Caspian? That I'm just a transaction?" His smile faltered for the briefest moment, something flickering in those golden eyes that might have been shame. But before he could respond, a third brother moved forward, and this one made Alara's heart skip for entirely different reasons. Where Demon was dark danger and Caspian was golden arrogance, this brother was gentle beauty, softer features, kind eyes, and a smile that actually reached his face with what seemed like genuine warmth. "I'm Theo," he said quietly, and his voice was nothing like his brother's. There was no command in it, no expectation, just an introduction. "Third son. And I apologize for my brother's terrible manners. You're not a transaction, Alara. You're a person who's been dragged into our nightmare, and you deserve better than this." He glanced back at the line of remaining brothers. "We all know you deserve better than this." Something in Alara's chest loosened slightly. At least one of them saw her as human. "Thank you," she managed, and Theo's smile widened just a fraction. But the moment of respite was brief. The fourth brother stepped forward with a dramatic flourish that would have been comical under different circumstances. "Lucian," he announced, executing an elaborate bow that set his dark hair swinging. "Fourth son, best dancer, most charming, and clearly the obvious choice if you have any sense of taste." Despite everything, Alara felt her lips twitch toward a smile. Lucian's eyes caught the movement immediately, and his grin turned absolutely wicked. "Ah, see? She already likes me best. We can end this whole charade right now. Alara chooses me, curse breaks, everyone lives happily ever after. Who's hungry? I know a fantastic place for a wedding feast." "You're an idiot," said the fifth brother, shoving Lucian aside with casual strength. This one was broader than the others, more muscle and less elegance, with a scar running through his left eyebrow and an expression that suggested he smiled about as often as it snowed in summer. "Kieran," he said to Alara, not bothering with Lucian's theatrical introduction. "Fifth son. I work with my hands, not my mouth, like this fool. You should know I don't want to marry you. Nothing personal. I don't want to marry anyone. But my brothers' lives are worth more than my preferences, so here we are." The brutal honesty was almost refreshing after Caspian's callousness and Lucian's performance. At least Kieran wasn't pretending this was anything other than what it was. "Noted," Alara said carefully. "I don't particularly want to marry 7 strangers either, if we're being honest. But I suppose we're both doing what we must." Something that might have been respect flickered across Kieran's scarred face before he stepped back into line. The sixth brother came forward, and Alara braced herself for whatever personality would emerge next. This one was younger than the others, probably close to her own age, with an almost scholarly air about him. He wore glasses, which was unusual for wolves whose enhanced healing typically corrected vision problems, and he carried himself with the slight awkwardness of someone more comfortable with books than people. "Roman," he said, pushing his glasses up his nose in a gesture that seemed nervous. "Sixth son, I've spent 3 years researching the curse, seeking an alternative way to break it. I failed, so please don't think this is what any of us wanted. If there had been any other option, any other way to save my brothers without dragging an innocent woman into our mess, I would have found it. His voice cracked slightly on the last words, and Alara saw genuine anguish in his face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry we couldn't save ourselves." The apology landed like a physical weight. Of all the brothers, Roman was the first actually to acknowledge what this cost her. Not just her freedom, but her future, her choices, her life. "It's not your fault," Alara said softly, surprising herself. "The witch cursed you. My father sold me to save his lands. We're all just trying to survive what other people decided for us." Roman's eyes met hers, and for a moment, a connection sparked between them. Understanding. Shared helplessness. The recognition of two people caught in circumstances beyond their control. Then the seventh brother stepped forward, and the entire energy in the room shifted. He was the youngest, probably no more than 20, and beautiful in a way that seemed almost unnatural. Where his brothers were handsome, this one was ethereal. Delicate features reminiscent of ancient statues, silver white hair that caught the candlelight, and eyes that held something wild and barely contained, like a storm constantly on the verge of breaking. "Ash," he said, and his voice was barely above a whisper. "Seventh son." The witch's curse hit me differently than the others. I'm connected to all of them, to their pain, their emotions, their thoughts, everything they feel. I feel 10 times stronger. He moved closer to Alara, and she noticed his hands were shaking. "So you should know that right now, Demon wants to protect you. Caspian wants to control you. Theo wants to comfort you. Lucian wants to charm you. Kieran wants to test you. Roman wants to apologize to you. And I want all of those things and none of them and everything in between." His hand reached out, hovering just above her cheek without quite touching. "When you choose your true mate, I'll feel that bond more intensely than even you will. I'll be inside your head, inside your heart, experiencing everything you experience with him. Every touch, every kiss, every moment of intimacy." The witch made sure the youngest would suffer most. Alara's breath came shallow. The full horror of the curse was beginning to crystallize. It wasn't just about choosing one brother and disappointing 6. It was about creating a lifetime of torture for all of them, but especially for this beautiful, broken boy who would be forced to experience her love for another as if it were his own. "This is barbaric," Alara whispered, her voice trembling with anger she hadn't known she possessed. "The witch didn't just curse you. She cursed me too. She cursed whoever would eventually break this spell. I'm not your salvation. I'm part of your punishment." The high priestess's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "The girl speaks the truth. The witch's revenge was designed to hurt all involved. But the alternative is death for 7 alphas whose bloodline protects thousands. One woman's suffering to save 7 lives and the pack that depends on them. The mathematics are clear. One woman's suffering. As if Alara's entire existence could be reduced to an equation. As if the torture of 6 men forced to want what they could never have was just an acceptable cost of doing business. As if Ash spending his life drowning in emotions that weren't his own was simply the price of survival. "I won't do it," Alara said suddenly, the words escaping before thought could catch them. "I won't choose. I won't be the instrument of anyone's torture, curse or no curse." The reaction was immediate. Demon's hand shot out, gripping her arm with enough force to bruise. "You don't have a choice. Your father signed a contract in blood. You refuse to complete the ritual, and your entire family dies. Your mother, your sister, the stepmother who treated you like dirt your whole life. All of them." Alara wrenched her arm free, glaring up at the eldest brother with newfound fury. "So I'm blackmailed into this? My family's lives in exchange for mine? How is that any different from what the witch did to you? You rejected her daughter, and she cursed you for it. My father rejected his debts, and now I'm cursed for it. We're all just pawns in games played by people with more power than conscience." Something flickered across Demon's face that might have been admiration before his expression hardened again. "Pretty speech. Doesn't change reality. The ritual happens whether you cooperate or not. We can do this with you conscious and willing, or we can do it with you unconscious and under the influence. Your choice." Caspian stepped forward, his earlier casual cruelty replaced with something colder. "He's not joking. The pack's survival depends on breaking this curse. 7 alphas all linked means that when one of us starts to turn feral, we all do. We've held it back for 3 years, but the situation is getting worse. Last month, Kieran shifted during a council meeting and nearly killed 3 elders before we could restrain him. The month before, Ash went catatonic for 5 days, because he was overwhelmed by all our combined rage. He moved closer, his voice dropping. You think you're being noble by refusing? You're just choosing which innocents die, them or your family. Make your decision. Theo's gentle voice cut through the tension. There might be another way. All eyes turned to him. Even the high priestess looked interested. What if she doesn't choose right away? What if we complete the binding ceremony, establish the initial connection that starts unraveling the curse, but delay the claiming? Give her time to actually know us before deciding whose mark she'll bear for the rest of her life. Demon shook his head immediately. The curse requires a full bond. Marriage and claiming. You know this, Theo? We can't just half complete the ritual. But Roman's research, Theo persisted, looking to his scholarly brother. You found references to staged bonding, didn't you? Where the magical marriage happens first, and the physical claiming can occur within a lunar cycle without breaking the spell's progression. Roman pushed his glasses up, his expression thoughtful. Theoretically, yes. The curse would begin to unravel once she's bound to all of us in the ceremony. The claiming determines which brother's bond becomes primary. But there's a grace period, usually 28 days. Long enough for the magic to settle and for the participants to prepare for the final step. Lucian let out a low whistle. So you're suggesting we marry her today? But she gets a month to decide which one of us gets actually to consummate the bond? That's either brilliant or the worst idea in pack history. I can't decide which. Kieran grunted. It's asking for trouble. A month of all 7 of us being partially bonded to her. All of us feeling the pull. None of us able to complete it. That's a recipe for violence. Ash's whisper cut through the debate. But it gives her a choice. Real choice, not forced choice. Isn't that what the witch's daughter wanted in the first place? To be chosen, not rejected? Maybe honoring that principle is how we actually break this curse properly. The silence that followed was heavy with consideration. Alara's mind raced. A month. 28 days to decide which brother would claim her completely. Which 6 would spend their lives wanting what they couldn't have. It wasn't freedom, but it was more than she'd had moments ago. It was time. Time to understand them. Time to see past the golden eyes and alpha arrogance to whoever they actually were beneath. Time to maybe, possibly, find a way out of this nightmare that didn't destroy everyone involved. I accept those terms, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Marry me to all 7 today. Give me a month to know you. Really know you. Before I make a decision that will affect the rest of our lives. The high priestess's milky eyes studied her for a long moment. The girl has courage, very well. We proceed with the binding ceremony. But understand this, child. Once you are bound to these 7, you will feel their emotions as they feel yours. You will know their thoughts, their desires, their pain, and they will know yours. There will be no privacy, no secrets, no hiding what you truly feel about any of them. She raised her staff, and power rippled through the air like heat waves. You will spend 1 month as wife to 7 alphas, and every moment of attraction, every spark of desire, every hint of preference you feel will be known to all of them immediately. Can you survive that level of exposure? Alara's throat went dry. She hadn't considered that aspect. Living with 7 men was one thing, but living with 7 men who could feel every flutter of her heart, every unwanted attraction, every private thought. That was a different kind of torture entirely. Can I survive it? She repeated, lifting her chin. I don't know, but I suppose we're all about to find out together. A smile ghosted across Demon's face. There and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. Caspian looked impressed despite himself. Theo's expression warmed with approval. Lucian actually laughed. Kieran's scowl softened fractionally. Roman nodded with respect, and Ash watched her with those storm-filled eyes, seeing too much. Then let us begin, the high priestess declared, striking her staff against the stone floor 3 times. The candles flared brighter, their flames turning from yellow to silver. Form the circle of 7. The brothers moved with practiced precision, creating a perfect circle around Alara. She stood at the center, her white gown suddenly feeling like a target. 7 directions, 7 brothers, 7 bonds she was about to forge, whether she was ready or not. The priestess began to chant in the old language, words that predated modern wolf packs, that reached back to when magic and nature were the same thing. The air grew thick, heavy with power. Alara's skin prickled as energy began to build. Ilara Thorne, the priestess intoned, her voice resonating with supernatural authority. Do you accept these 7 as your bonded mates, to hold in your heart until death claims you? This was it, the point of no return. Say yes, and her life as she knew it ended. Say no, and people die. Not much of a choice, really. I accept, Ilara said, and the words tasted like ashes and fate. Demon Silvercrest, eldest son, do you accept this woman as your bonded mate, to cherish even if she never chooses you? Demon's golden eyes locked onto Ilara's. I accept. The first thread of magic snapped into place, and Ilara gasped as sensation flooded through her. She could suddenly feel Demon, his presence a weight in her chest. Grief, so much grief, buried under layers of pride and duty, and underneath that, hope. Desperate, terrified hope that maybe, possibly, she might choose him. The vulnerability of it stole her breath. Caspian Silvercrest, second son, do you accept this woman as your bonded mate, to honor even if she never chooses you? Caspian's jaw tightened. I accept. The second thread connected, and Ilara staggered as another consciousness brushed against hers. Caspian's emotions were more complex, more controlled than Demon's, but she could feel them anyway. Anger at the witch, at his father for not protecting them better, at himself for failing to find another solution, and buried beneath the anger, fear, soul-deep fear that he wasn't enough, had never been enough, would never be chosen. Theo Silvercrest, third son, do you accept this woman as your bonded mate, to protect even if she never chooses you? Theo's voice was gentle. I accept. Warmth flooded through Ilara as the third bond formed. Theo's emotions were softer, kinder, but no less intense. She felt his compassion for her, his guilt that she'd been dragged into their curse, his determination to make this as bearable as possible, and underneath longing to be seen, to be chosen not for duty but for himself. Lucian Silvercrest, fourth son, do you accept this woman as your bonded mate, to delight in even if she never chooses you? Lucian's grin was sharp. I accept with pleasure. The fourth thread snapped into place, and Ilara nearly laughed at the chaos that was Lucian's emotional landscape. Joy and pain twisted together, performance and sincerity so intertwined she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. He used humor as a shield, she realized. Kept everyone at arm's length with jokes and charm so they'd never see how much the curse had broken something fundamental inside him. Kieran Silvercrest, fifth son, do you accept this woman as your bonded mate, to serve even if she never chooses you? Kieran's voice was gruff. I accept. The fifth bond formed, and Ilara braced herself for the surge of emotion. But Kieran's feelings were surprisingly controlled, disciplined in a way the others weren't. He'd built walls, she realized. Thick, high walls to protect himself from precisely this kind of vulnerability. But she could feel what lay beneath. Loyalty. Fierce, unshakable loyalty to his brothers. And resignation. He'd already decided she wouldn't choose him, had accepted it as fact, and was preparing to live with that reality. Roman Silvercrest, sixth son, do you accept this woman as your bonded mate, to study even if she never chooses you? Roman's answer came softly but firmly. I accept. The sixth thread connected, and Ilara's mind suddenly flooded with Roman's knowledge. She could feel his vast intellect, his endless curiosity, his desperate need to understand, fix, and solve. 3 years of research, 3 years of failure, 3 years of watching his brothers suffer while he couldn't find the answer. The guilt was crushing, and beneath it, a tiny spark of hope that maybe Ilara was the answer he'd been searching for all along. Ash Silvercrest, seventh son, do you accept this woman as your bonded mate, to treasure even if she never chooses you? Ash's whisper was barely audible. I accept. The final bond snapped into place, and Ilara's knees buckled. Ash caught her before she fell, his arms surprisingly strong for someone so delicate-looking. And through the bond, she felt everything, all 6 of his brother's emotions, magnified, reflected, and amplified through Ash's supernatural sensitivity. It was overwhelming, too much, too many feelings, too many thoughts, too many needs and wants and fears crashing through her consciousness like a tsunami. Breathe, Ash murmured against her ear, his voice the only anchor in the chaos. Just breathe. It'll settle. I promise it settles. Ilara clung to him, to his voice, to the unexpected steadiness in his arms despite the storm of emotions raging through the bond. Slowly, Gradually, the overwhelming flood began to recede, not disappear, but become manageable. She could still feel all 7 of them, still sense their emotions like additional heartbeats in her chest. But it no longer threatened to drown her. "The bonds are formed," the high priestess announced, satisfaction evident in her ancient voice. 7 brothers, 1 bride. The curse recognizes the connection. It has begun to unravel. She turned her milky gaze to Alara, who was still supported by Ash's arms. "You have 28 days, child. Choose wisely. Choose wrong, and the curse may twist into something worse than death." Before Alara could ask what that meant, the priestess vanished in a swirl of silver smoke, leaving her alone with 7 men who were now permanently connected to her soul. The silence that followed was deafening. "Well," Lucian said finally, his voice too bright. "That was dramatic. Anyone else feel like they just got hit by a stampeding elk, or is it just me?" Kieran grunted. "It's not just you." He looked at Alara with a hint of concern. "You should sit down. The first few hours after bonding can be really tough. Your body needs to adjust to carrying 7 additional consciousnesses." Theo was already pulling a chair forward. Ever considerate. Alara sank into it gratefully, her legs still unsteady. Through the bond, she could feel their worry. All 7 of them were concerned for her well-being in different ways, different flavors of the same fundamental care. It was strange, overwhelming. And underneath her exhaustion, it was unexpectedly touching. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice smaller than she intended. Roman stepped forward, back in research mode, which she was learning was his comfort zone. "Now we take you to Silvercrest Manor. You'll have your own suite, of course. The curse requires proximity, but not impropriety. We'll need to spend time together, all of us, to strengthen the bonds enough for the curse to continue unraveling. But there are rules." He pulled out a small leather journal from his jacket pocket, flipping it open to a page covered in neat handwriting. "I've documented everything. Protocols for bonded mates in plural arrangements. Historical precedents. Magical theory. The key is balance. Each brother needs equal access to you, equal opportunity to make his case, or the bonds become unstable." Caspian laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So we're competing for her affection on a schedule? How romantic. The stuff of legends." Demon shot him a warning look. "We're surviving a curse." Romance was never part of the equation. But through the bond, Alara felt the lie in those words. Demon wanted romance. Wanted to be chosen not out of obligation, but desire. They all did. Even Kieran with his walls and Caspian with his cynicism. The curse had stolen their choice 3 years ago, but her choice in 28 days could give them something back. Or take everything away forever. "I need to see my family," Alara said suddenly, surprising herself. "Before we go to the manor, I need to say a proper goodbye to my mother and sister. The soldiers took me so quickly this morning. They must be terrified." Demon's expression hardened. "Your father sold you to save his lands. Why would you want to comfort the family that sacrificed you?" The question hit like a slap, but Alara met his gaze steadily. "My father made a choice I'll never forgive him for. But my mother and sister had no say in it. They deserve to know I'm alive, that I'm being treated well, that this arrangement isn't as terrible as they fear." Through the bond, she felt Demon's resistance crumble slightly. He understood family obligation, even when that family didn't deserve it. Leadership meant doing the right thing even when it cost you. "Fine," he said after a moment. "We'll stop at your family's cottage on the way to the manor. But only for an hour. We need to get you settled before nightfall. The bonds are unstable during the first full night. We all need to be somewhere secure." Ash, who had finally released Alara from his steadying embrace, spoke quietly. She should know what unstable means. The other brothers exchanged looks, and Alara felt a spike of anxiety through the bond that came from all of them simultaneously. "What does unstable mean?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Roman cleared his throat, pushing his glasses up in that nervous gesture she was starting to recognize. "The bonds create a feedback loop. Your emotions affect us, and our emotions affect you. During the first night, before your mind has fully adapted to the connection, things can become intense. Some bonded mates experience vivid shared dreams. Others feel phantom sensations from their partners. In rare cases, the emotional overflow can cause temporary loss of individual identity." Alara stared at him. "Loss of individual identity? You mean I could forget who I am?" Theo moved closer, his presence calming through the bond even as his words were concerning. Not permanently, and it's rare. Most likely, you'll have very intense dreams where you experience memories or emotions that belong to us. It's disorienting but not dangerous. We'll be there to ground you if needed. The casual way he said we'll be there made heat rise in Alara's cheeks. You mean you'll all be in my bedroom? Lucian's grin was wicked. Technically, you'll be in the shared family wing, 7 bedrooms connected to a central common room. We'll be nearby, not with you, unless you want company, in which case I volunteer as tribute. Kieran smacked the back of Lucian's head with enough force to make him stumble. Ignore him. He doesn't know when to stop talking. But through the bond, Alara felt Lucian's emotional truth beneath the jest. He was terrified, using humor to mask the bone-deep fear that she'd find him frivolous, unworthy of serious consideration. That his brother's intensity and strength and gentleness would overshadow his charm until he became invisible. She opened her mouth to say something, to offer reassurance, but Demon was already moving toward the door. We're wasting time. If we're stopping at your family's cottage, we need to leave now. The sun sets early this time of year. The brothers fell into formation around her naturally, like a protective detail that had worked together for years, which Alara supposed through the growing ache of exhaustion they had. 3 years bound by a curse, learning to function as a unit even as the magic slowly destroyed them from within. Now she was part of that unit, the 8th piece of a puzzle, designed for 7 pieces. As they walked through the halls of the estate toward the waiting carriages, Alara caught glimpses of other pack members. Servants and guards and nobles, all stopping to stare at the strange procession. 7 unmated alphas and their shared bride. She could feel their judgment, their curiosity, their disgust at the unnatural arrangement. Through the bond, she felt the brothers' awareness of it too. Their shame, their defiance, their bone-deep weariness at being spectacles in their own home. The carriages were elaborate affairs, gilded and bearing the Silvercrest crest on their doors. 2 of them, both large enough to seat multiple passengers in cushioned comfort that spoke of wealth Alara had never imagined, let alone experienced. Her family's cottage could probably fit inside one of these carriages with room to spare. You'll ride with me, Theo and Roman, Demon said, gesturing to the first carriage. It wasn't a request. Caspian will take the others in the second carriage. We need to discuss what you'll say to your family. Alara bristled at the command in his tone. I'll say whatever I choose. They're my family. Through the bond, she felt Demon's flash of irritation, but also his grudging respect for her spine. Your family sold you. The pack witnessed the contract signing. If you show them too much kindness, it signals weakness. These bonds make you pack royalty now. You represent all of us. He stepped closer, his voice lowering. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to protect you. There's a difference. Was there? Alara wasn't sure anymore. But she was too tired to argue, too overwhelmed by the day's events to fight every battle. She allowed Demon to hand her into the carriage, acutely aware of how his touch sent sparks through the bond. He felt it too. She knew he did, could sense his sharp intake of breath, the way desire flickered through his carefully controlled emotions before he shut it down. Theo climbed in after her, settling on the bench across with the effortless grace of someone comfortable in his own skin. Roman followed, immediately pulling out his journal and beginning to write notes, already documenting the bonding experience for his research. The door closed. The carriage lurched into motion, and Alara was alone with 2 of her 7 husbands for the first time. The silence stretched. Outside, she could hear the second carriage following and feel the presence of the other 4 brothers through the bond, even at a distance. It was like having 7 additional shadows, 7 extra heartbeats keeping time with her own. You're scared, Theo observed gently. Not a question. A statement. Through the bond, he could feel exactly what she felt. Alara saw no point in denying it. Wouldn't you be? I woke up this morning as nobody. Went to sleep last night, planning to help my mother with the washing. Now I'm magically married to 7 princes and expected to choose which one gets my body and soul, while the others spend their lives suffering. Yes, I'm terrified. Roman looked up from his journal, his expression thoughtful behind his glasses. For what it's worth, I'm terrified too. We all are. The curse has been a death sentence hanging over us for 3 years. You're our only chance at survival, which means we're completely at your mercy. You could choose poorly out of spite. Could refuse to choose it all and let us all die. Could pick the brother you find most tolerable and condemn the rest of us to eternal wanting. We're scared of you, Alara, just as much as you're scared of us." The honesty landed like a punch to her chest. She'd been so focused on her own loss of agency that she hadn't fully considered their vulnerability. They needed her. Desperately. Completely. Their lives literally depended on her making a choice that felt impossible. "I won't choose out of spite," she said quietly. "Whatever decision I make, it won't be to hurt any of you. You didn't ask for this curse any more than I asked to be sold." Demon's voice cut through the moment, harder than his brother's. "Your father asked for this. Make no mistake about that. He sought us out when he heard about the curse, offered you up as a solution before we even knew compatible bloodlines existed. He was that desperate to clear his gambling debts." The words hit like ice water. "What?" Alara breathed. Demon's golden eyes met hers, and through the bond she felt his anger on her behalf. "The official story is that our magical testing found you. But the truth? Your father came to the Pack Elders 2 months ago with genealogy records proving your bloodline's compatibility. He negotiated the contract himself. Made sure it included debt forgiveness and land rights in exchange for your service to the Silvercrest family." Alara's hands clenched in her lap, nails digging into her palms hard enough to hurt. "He shopped me to you, like livestock." Her voice shook with fury she'd been suppressing since the moment soldiers arrived at her door. He didn't even have the decency to be forced into it. He volunteered his own daughter. Theo leaned forward, his hand hovering near hers but not quite touching. "I'm sorry. You deserve to know the truth, but maybe not quite so bluntly." He shot Demon a look that held reproach. Demon didn't apologize. She needs to understand what she's dealing with. Her family will play the victims when we arrive. Tears, apologies, and protests that they had no choice. But they did have a choice. They chose money over their daughter. Through the bond, Alara felt the complicated tangle of his emotions. Yes, he was angry on her behalf, but there was also something personal in his fury. Something that resonated with his own history. Someone had chosen money or power over him once too. The witch's rejection had started this curse, but something deeper had made him vulnerable to it. The carriage slowed as they approached the modest village where Alara had spent her entire unremarkable life. Cottages with thatched roofs dotted the landscape, smoke rising from chimneys as families prepared evening meals. Children played in the street, stopping to stare as the elaborate Silvercrest carriages rolled past. Alara saw familiar faces. The baker's daughter, who used to mock her for reading too much, was now the one being mocked. The blacksmith's son who'd courted her sister but never gave Alara a second glance. The village elder who'd declared at her coming-of-age ceremony that her inability to shift made her half a person at best. They all stopped and stared now, at the carriages, at the crest, at the impossible sight of their village's most unremarkable daughter, returning as something they couldn't quite comprehend. The carriage stopped in front of a cottage Alara knew by heart. The place was small and poorly maintained, with a roof that leaked when it rained and windows that never quite closed properly. Home. Except it had never really felt like home, just the place where she existed between rejections. Demon exited first, handing her down with formal courtesy that the watching villagers would note and gossip about for months. The other brothers emerged from the second carriage, forming a loose protective circle that made Alara simultaneously grateful and embarrassed. She didn't need 7 alpha bodyguards to face her own mother. The cottage door opened before she could knock. Her mother stood in the doorway, and Alara's breath caught at how much older she looked than just this morning. Gray hair more disheveled, eyes red from crying, hands twisted in her apron with anxiety. "Alara," her mother breathed, and then she was rushing forward, pulling Alara into an embrace that smelled of bread dough and lavender soap. "Oh, my darling girl, we've been so worried. The soldiers wouldn't tell us anything, just took you and left. Your father has been beside himself." Through the bond, Alara felt 7 distinct reactions to the mention of her father. Demon's contempt, Caspian's disgust, Theo's pity, Lucian's mocking amusement, Kieran's cold assessment, Roman's clinical interest, Ash's amplified echo of all 6 combined. "Where is father?" Alara asked, her voice harder than she intended. Her mother pulled back, confusion crossing her worn face. "At the tavern, celebrating. The debt forgiveness came through just this afternoon. We're saved, darling. The lands are ours again, clear and free, celebrating." Her father was celebrating, while she stood here magically bound to 7 strangers, facing an impossible choice that would haunt the rest of her life. He was drinking away his relief at being saved from the consequences of his own making. The fury that swept through Alara was white-hot and pure, and through the bond, she felt the brothers respond to it. Demon satisfaction that she finally saw the truth. Caspian's grim vindication. Theo feels a deep sympathy for her pain. The emotional feedback loop intensified her anger until she was shaking with it. "He's celebrating," Ilara repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. "I was sold this morning, and he's celebrating tonight." Her mother's face crumpled. "Ilara, you have to understand. We were going to lose everything. The manor lords were going to take the cottage, the lands, everything we've worked for. Your father did what he had to do to save the family." A harsh laugh escaped before Ilara could stop it. "Save the family? He sold me to break a curse. Do you even know what that means, Mother? I'm magically married to all 7 Silvercrest brothers. I have to choose one to bond with truly, and the other 6 will spend the rest of their lives wanting me and never having me. I'm not saved. I'm cursed too now." Her mother paled, swaying slightly. Behind Ilara, Theo moved forward instinctively to catch the older woman if she fell, but she steadied herself against the doorframe. "All 7? Her mother whispered. "But that's not natural. That's not how bonding works." Mira appeared in the doorway behind their mother, her younger sister's face tear-stained but determined. Unlike their mother's shock, Mira's expression held something else. Anger that mirrored Alara's own. "It's exactly how their curse works," Mira said, her voice sharp. "I researched it after the soldiers took Alara. Went to the village library and found every record I could about the Silvercrest curse. Father knew. He knew exactly what he was condemning her to, and he did it anyway because his gambling debts mattered more than his daughter." Alara's throat tightened. Mira had tried to understand and had cared enough to search for answers. Through the bond, she felt Roman's interest sharpen. He appreciated research and respected anyone who sought knowledge rather than accepting ignorance. "What did you find?" Roman asked, stepping forward with genuine curiosity. Mira's eyes widened slightly as she took in the 7 brothers properly for the first time. Alara watched her sister's gaze move from face to face, seeing the impossible beauty that marked alpha bloodlines, the power that radiated from them even standing still. Then Mira squared her shoulders and met Roman's gaze directly. "I found the original curse documentation. The witch didn't just curse you to share a mate, she cursed you to experience rejection intimately. Whichever 6 brothers Alara doesn't choose will feel her love for the chosen one, as if it were directed at them. But they will never be able to act on it. It's designed to create maximum suffering." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the brothers, who lived with the curse daily, seemed stunned that this young village girl had uncovered details they'd perhaps tried to avoid confronting directly. "You're correct," Roman said quietly, respect evident in his voice. "That's the heart of it. The witch wanted her daughter's rejection avenged 7-fold. Make 7 men know exactly how it feels to be unwanted while watching another be chosen." Mira's hands clenched into fists. "It's monstrous. And our father fed Alara into that machine to save his worthless lands. I'll never forgive him. Never." Alara felt tears prick her eyes. At least someone in her family saw the horror of what had been done. At least Mira understood. "I came to say goodbye properly," Alara said to her mother and sister, ignoring the fact that her father was absent and was celebrating instead of grieving the loss of his daughter. "I'm going to Silvercrest Manor now. I have 28 days to make my choice. After that, I don't know when I'll see you again." Her mother's face crumpled completely. 28 days? But that's not enough time to know anyone, let alone 7 someones. How can they expect you to make such a decision so quickly? Demon's voice cut through the conversation, cold and commanding. "The curse doesn't care about fair timelines. It requires a full commitment, including marriage, and a promise to break completely. We've given her a month to choose which brother's claim she'll accept. That's more consideration than the curse allows, more time than we can really afford. The longer the bonds remain incomplete, the more unstable we all become." He looked at Alara, and through the bond, she felt the weight of his concern for her safety. She needs rest, needs to adjust to carrying 7 consciousnesses in her mind. We need to get her to the manor before full dark. Mira stepped forward suddenly, reaching for Alara's hands. "Be selfish," she said urgently, her young face fierce with determination. "I know that's not who you are. I know you'll want to choose based on what's best for them. Who needs you most? Who'll suffer least? But Alara, be selfish. Choose the one you want, the one who makes your heart race and your soul sing. Don't martyr yourself for their comfort. You've been overlooked and dismissed your whole life. For once, choose what you want. The words hit Alara like a physical blow. Permission she hadn't known she needed. Through the bond, she felt the brothers' complex reactions to Mira's advice. Each of them hoped to be the one Alara wanted. Each of them feared they wouldn't be. Alara pulled her sister into a fierce embrace. I'll try, she whispered. I can't promise I'll succeed at being selfish, but I'll try. She pulled back, looking at her mother, seeing the regret, fear, and helplessness in the older woman's face. Tell Father I hope his celebration was worth it. Tell him the next time he sees me, I'll be someone's fully bonded mate, and he'll never be able to use me as a bargaining chip again. Her mother flinched but nodded, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. I'm so sorry, darling. If I'd understood what the contract truly meant, I would have stopped him. I would have found another way. Would she have? Alara wanted to believe that, wanted to think her mother would have fought for her. But the truth was more complicated. Always more complicated than simple villains and victims. Her mother had been trapped too, in a different way, and trapped by poverty, a gambling husband, and a society that gave women few choices. I know, Mama, Alara said softly, though she wasn't sure she believed it. I know. Theo touched her elbow gently, his presence warm and grounding through the bond. We should go. The sun's almost down. Alara nodded, stepping back from her family, from the cottage that had never been a real home, from the life she'd never really lived. The brothers reformed their protective circle around her, and she let them guide her back to the carriages. As they pulled away, Alara looked back one last time. Mira stood in the doorway, hand raised in farewell, face determined. Her mother had collapsed onto the steps, weeping, and somewhere in the village tavern, her father drank away his guilt with money purchased by his daughter's freedom. The cottage grew smaller in the distance until it disappeared entirely. Alara turned forward, facing the unknown road to Silvercrest Manor, to 28 days of impossible decisions, to a future that terrified and compelled her in equal measure. Through the bond, she felt 7 distinct presences, 7 men who were now permanently part of her consciousness. Demon's strength and hidden grief. Caspian's cynicism masks fear, Theo's gentleness and secret longing, Lucian's humor shields pain, Kieran's walls protect loyalty, Roman's intellect hides guilt, Ash's sensitivity amplifies everything. 7 souls were bound to hers, and she had to choose just one. The weight of it settled over her like a shroud as the carriages rolled through darkening countryside toward her new life. The journey took longer than expected. By the time the manor came into view, night had entirely fallen, and the bonds were already beginning to show their instability. Alara felt dizzy, her sense of self blurring at the edges as emotions that weren't hers bled through the connection. Demon's vigilance as he watched the darkness outside. Roman's analytical assessment of her deteriorating condition. Theo's worry manifested as a tight knot in her chest that wasn't actually her chest at all. Almost there, Theo murmured, and Alara realized with a start that she'd been leaning against him, seeking the comfort of solid presence as her mind fragmented. I can feel you, she whispered, half delirious with exhaustion and magical overload. All of you, all the time. How do you bear it? How do you stay yourself when there are so many voices? Demon's hand found hers across the carriage, his grip firm and grounding. Practice. We've had 3 years to learn how to maintain our individual identities while bound together. You'll learn too, but tonight will be hard. The first night always is. The manor materialized from the darkness like something from a fever dream. Massive stone walls, towers reaching toward the star-scattered sky, windows glowing with warm light that promised safety. Alara wasn't sure she believed in. The carriages stopped before an entrance that could have swallowed her family's entire cottage. Servants appeared immediately, moving with the efficiency of a well-trained household. They didn't stare at Alara the way the village people had. Their faces remained carefully neutral, professionally blank. But she could feel their judgment anyway, could sense their disapproval of the unnatural arrangement, even if they were too well trained to show it. Demon helped her from the carriage, and Alara's legs nearly buckled. The world tilted and spun, and suddenly, hands were supporting her. Multiple hands, multiple voices, all 7 brothers surrounding her with concern that crashed through the bonds like a wave. "Get her inside," Caspian ordered, his usual cynicism replaced with genuine alarm. "She's crashing faster than Roman predicted." Kieran lifted her, his strong arms cradling her against his broad chest, as if she weighed nothing. Through the bond, Alara felt his discomfort at the intimacy, his walls screaming at the vulnerability of holding her. But he did it anyway because she needed it, and that mattered more than his comfort. The manor's interior passed in a blur of candlelight and expensive furnishings and hallways that seemed to stretch forever. Alara tried to focus, tried to maintain some awareness of where she was being taken, but the bonds pulled at her consciousness like riptides. She could feel Ash somewhere nearby, his presence a maelstrom of amplified emotion that threatened to drown her. Could feel Lucian's fear beneath his jokes, Theo's steady compassion, Roman's clinical concern, Caspian's tightly controlled panic, Demon's fierce determination that she would survive this. "Here," Kieran said, and suddenly Alara was being lowered onto the softest surface she'd ever felt. A bed, massive and covered in blankets that smelled of lavender and something else. Something wild and masculine that made her aware she was in a space that belonged to them. "This is the bonding suite," Roman explained, his voice coming from somewhere to her left, traditionally used for newly mated pairs during the adjustment period. "We've modified it for our unusual circumstances. 7 bedrooms branch off from this central room. You'll sleep here tonight, and we'll each stay in our respective rooms, close enough for the bonds to stabilize, far enough for propriety." Alara forced her eyes open, focusing with effort on Roman's face. "What happens if the bonds don't stabilize?" The brothers exchanged looks, and through the bond, she felt their shared anxiety. It was Ash who answered, his ethereal presence suddenly at her bedside, his storm-filled eyes meeting hers with terrible honesty. "If the bonds don't stabilize, the feedback loop intensifies, until none of us can tell where one consciousness ends and another begins. You could lose yourself in our emotions. We could lose ourselves in yours. In the worst cases, the bonded group becomes a single hive mind, individual identity erased." Horror cut through Alara's exhaustion. "That can happen?" Demon sat on the edge of the bed, his presence commanding even in the dim light. "It's rare, and it's temporary, even in the worst cases. But yes, tonight you might experience dreams or sensations that belong to us. You might feel memories that aren't yours, desires that originated in someone else's mind. The key is to remember who you are. Hold on to your core self, and the rest will settle by morning." "Easy for you to say," Alara muttered, her eyes already drifting closed despite her fear. "You've had practice." She felt Demon's hand brush hair from her forehead, the touch gentle in a way that contradicted his harsh reputation. "We'll be here, all of us. If you get lost, call out through the bond. We'll guide you back." The last thing Alara saw before darkness claimed her was 7 faces surrounding the bed, 7 pairs of golden eyes watching her with concern and hunger and hope and fear. 7 men whose lives depended on her choice, whose futures rested in her hands, whose emotions were now permanently tangled with her own. Sleep pulled her under like a dark tide, and immediately the dreams began. She was running through a forest, but it wasn't her running. The body was too tall, too strong, moved with a predator's grace she'd never possessed. Demon's body, she realized. Demon's memory. She was reliving a moment from his past, watching through his eyes as he pursued something through the trees. Not prey, a person. The witch's daughter. Young, beautiful, and desperate to be noticed by the eldest Silvercrest son. She could feel Demon's contempt for her, his arrogance, his certainty that no half-blood mongrel deserved his consideration. The memory shifted, twisted, and suddenly she was the one being rejected. Was feeling the crushing humiliation of offering yourself to someone and being dismissed as worthless. The witch's daughter's pain became her pain, became every rejection Alara had ever experienced magnified 1,000 times. Then the dream shifted again, and she was in a different memory entirely. Caspian's this time, watching helplessly as the curse took hold, watching his brothers suffer, watching everything he'd been taught to protect crumble around him. The fear of failing, of not being strong enough, of proving every doubt about his worth correct. The memory was visceral, overwhelming, and Alara wanted to scream but couldn't because this wasn't her body, wasn't her mouth, wasn't her life. Another shift. Theo's memory now, gentler but no less painful, loving his brothers, wanting to help them, being too soft to do what needed to be done, watching harder men make harder choices while he offered comfort that solved nothing. The quiet anguish of being kind in a world that rewarded cruelty. Lucian's turn. Performance after performance, smile after smile, joke after joke, until he couldn't remember which parts of himself were genuine and which were the act. The loneliness of being everyone's entertainment but nobody's confidant. The fear that if he ever stopped performing, they'd realize there was nothing underneath worth keeping. Kieran's memory hit like a hammer. Violence, discipline, and the crushing responsibility of being the strong one. Building walls to protect himself, to protect his brothers, to protect everyone from the rage that simmered beneath his skin. The exhaustion of never being allowed to be vulnerable, to be weak, to be anything other than the unbreakable foundation everyone else leaned on. Roman's memory consumed her next, and this one nearly broke her. 3 years of research, 3 years of desperate searching for a cure, for an answer, for anything that would save his brothers. Every failed experiment, every dead end, every moment of hope crushed by reality. The guilt of being the smart one, the one who should have solved this, and failing anyway. The crushing weight of 6 lives depends on his intellect, but it is not enough. Then Ash's memories flooded in, and Alara screamed silently in the dream because this was different. This wasn't one memory, one moment, one perspective. This was all of them at once, filtered through Ash's supernatural sensitivity, amplified and reflected and twisted until she couldn't tell where one brother ended and another began. She felt Demon's grief and Caspian's fear, and Theo's, compassion and Lucian's loneliness and Kieran's rage and Roman's guilt all simultaneously, all crashing through her consciousness like competing symphonies played at maximum volume. This was what Ash lived with every moment of every day, this chaos. This beautiful, terrible chaos of loving 6 brothers so intensely that their pain became indistinguishable from his own. No wonder he seemed so fragile, so ethereal, like a strong wind might blow him away. He was holding together under pressure that would shatter anyone else. Alara thrashed in the bed, trying to wake up, trying to escape the onslaught of emotions and memories that weren't hers. She could feel herself fragmenting, her sense of self dissolving like sugar in water. Who was she? Alara Thorne, 22, from a village she couldn't remember the name of anymore. No, that wasn't right. She was Demon, wasn't she? The eldest son, carrying the weight of the curse's origin. Or was she Caspian, second son, terrified of failing? Theo wanting to heal everyone? Lucian performing to survive? Kieran building walls? Roman drowning in guilt? Ash feeling everything times 7? Alara. The voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Alara, come back. Follow my voice. She tried to focus on it, tried to orient herself toward the sound, but she was lost in the storm of 7 consciousnesses. Who am I? She asked, and her voice sounded like it came from underwater, distorted and wrong. You're Alara Thorne, the voice said firmly, and she recognized it now. Demon. You're 22 years old. You have a sister named Mira. You love stories and reading, and you're braver than you know. You're not us. You're you. Come back to yourself. Other voices joined his, creating a lifeline of sound in the chaos. You have brown hair, Theo said gently. Brown eyes. You blush when you're embarrassed. You stood up to 7 alphas today and didn't back down. Caspian's voice, grudging but present. You called us out for treating you like a transaction. You were right to do it. That takes courage we didn't expect. Lucian, his usual humor tempered with sincerity. You almost smiled at my joke during the bonding ceremony. I saw it. That was you, Alara, not any of us. Your reaction, your moment, Kieran's gruff voice. You demanded to see your family even though we could have refused. You fought for what mattered to you. That's who you are. Someone who fights. Roman. Analytical but kind. Your mind works differently from ours. I can feel it through the bond. You see patterns we miss. Make connections we don't. You're unique. Separate. Yourself. And Ash, his whisper somehow cutting through everything else. You're the calm in my storm, Alara. For the first time in 3 years, I feel something that isn't an echo of my brother's. I feel you, distinct and clear and entirely your own. Hold on to that. You're real. You're separate. You're you. Slowly, painfully, Ilara felt herself coalesce. The memories and emotions that weren't hers began to recede, settling into background noise rather than all-consuming chaos. She could still feel the brothers through the bond, but they were separate from her now. 7 distinct presences instead of a hurricane of confusion. She opened her eyes. The bonding suite was lit by soft candlelight, and all 7 brothers were there. Not in the bed with her, propriety maintained, but close. Demon sat in a chair he'd pulled to the bedside. Theo stood at the foot of the bed, hands gripping the frame. Caspian leaned against the wall, arms crossed, but expression concerned. Lucian perched on the edge of a dresser, for once not smiling. Kieran stood like a sentinel by the door. Roman hovered near a bookshelf, journal in hand but forgotten. And Ash sat on the floor beside the bed, his back against the mattress, looking utterly exhausted. "How long?" Ilara asked, her voice rough. "How long was I lost?" Demon's expression was grim. 3 hours, the longest 3 hours of my life, and I've lived through a war. Through the bond, she felt his terror. All their terror. They'd thought they were losing her. Thought the bonds had consumed her identity completely. "I heard you," she said softly, meeting each of their gazes in turn. "All of you. Your voices pulled me back." Theo smiled, and the relief in it was palpable. "The bond goes both ways. We can lose ourselves in you just as easily as you can lose yourself in us. But we can also anchor each other, pull each other back from the edge." Caspian pushed off from the wall, moving closer. "You experienced our memories. I felt you in my head, seeing my fears. That wasn't supposed to happen so intensely, so quickly." He looked at Roman. "Your research said memory sharing was rare during first-night instability." Roman pushed his glasses up, looking troubled. "It is rare. The fact that it happened, and with such intensity, suggests the bonds formed more deeply than typical plural arrangements. The curse recognized her as truly compatible, not just magically adequate. The connection is stronger than I anticipated." Lucian let out a low whistle. "So we're what, super bonded to her? Is that good or bad?" "Both," Ash said quietly, his voice drained. "Good, because it means the curse will break cleanly when she chooses. Bad, because every moment until then, we're all more vulnerable to each other's emotions, more exposed, more raw." He looked up at Ilara with those storm-filled eyes. "You saw everything, didn't you? All our worst moments, our deepest shames." Ilara nodded slowly. There was no point in lying. Through the bond, they'd know anyway. "I saw Demon's rejection of the witch's daughter. Caspian's fear of failure. Theo's frustration at being too gentle. Lucian's loneliness behind the performance. Kieran's rage under the discipline. Roman feels guilty over not finding a cure. And Ash, I feel the same way you do every day. All of them at once, all the time. I don't know how you survive it." Ash's smile was sad and beautiful. "I survive it because I have to. Because they need me to. Now you understand why the curse is so cruel. It's not just about wanting what you can't have. It's about being forced to feel everything your brothers feel about the woman you all love. When you choose one of us, the other 6 won't just watch from the outside. We'll feel his joy as if it were our own, experience his bond with you through the magical connection, and know with perfect clarity exactly what we're missing." The horror of it settled over Ilara like a weight. "That's monstrous." Demon's laugh was harsh. "Now you understand what we're dealing with. The witch didn't just curse us to die together. She cursed us to suffer together, intimately, with no privacy and no escape." Kieran spoke from his position by the door, his voice rougher than usual. "You should sleep more. Real sleep this time, not the magical chaos. The bonds have stabilized enough now. You won't lose yourself again tonight." Ilara wanted to argue, wanted to stay awake and process everything she'd learned, but exhaustion pulled at her like a physical weight. The magical drain of the bonding, combined with the emotional trauma of the memory sharing, had left her utterly spent. "Will you stay?" she asked, the words escaping before she could stop them. "All of you? I don't want to be alone." Through the bond, she felt their surprise, their pleasure at being wanted, their determination to give her what she needed. "We'll stay," Demon said, his voice softer than she'd heard it yet. "We'll always stay when you need us." The brothers settled into positions around the room, close enough for the bonds to remain stable, far enough to maintain the propriety that kept this arrangement from becoming something the pack could use against them. Alara watched through heavy-lidded eyes as they made themselves comfortable. Demon remained in his chair by the bedside, clearly taking first watch like the warrior he was. Theo claimed a cushioned window seat, his gentle presence a balm through the bond. Caspian sprawled in another chair with deceptive casualness, but she could feel his alertness, his readiness to respond to any threat. Lucian settled onto a chaise lounge, for once still and quiet. Kieran took a position by the door, standing sentinel even as exhaustion pulled at him. Roman created a small nest of books and blankets in a corner, already reading by candlelight, and Ash remained on the floor beside her bed, his hand resting on the mattress near hers, close but not touching. The intimacy of it struck Alara suddenly. 7 men are arranging themselves around her sleeping space, protective and vulnerable in equal measure. This was her life now, this strange, complicated web of connection and obligation, and something else she couldn't quite name yet. "Tell me something true," she said into the quiet, fighting sleep a little longer. "Something the bond can't show me, something you choose to share." Silence stretched for a moment. Then Demon's voice, low and contemplative. "I dream about the moment I rejected the witch's daughter every night. In the dreams, I make a different choice. I see her for who she is, not what she is. I treat her with kindness instead of contempt, and the curse never happens. My brothers never suffer. I save us all by simply being less of an arrogant fool." The confession hung in the air, vulnerable and raw. Through the bond, Alara felt how much it cost him to admit that. Caspian spoke next, his voice stripped of its usual cynicism. "I'm terrified you'll choose me. Not because I don't want you, but because I don't think I'm capable of making you happy. I've spent 3 years holding my brothers together through sheer force of will, and I'm so tired. What if I choose wrong with you? Like I've chosen wrong with everything else? What if being bonded to me is just another burden you have to carry?" Theo's gentle voice followed. "I envy Kieran's strength and Demon's decisiveness and Caspian's certainty, even when it's false certainty. I spend every day wishing I were harder, tougher, more like what an alpha should be, but I can't change who I am. I'm soft, and I'm tired of apologizing for it." Lucian's contribution was quieter than his usual performances. "I don't remember the last time I laughed for real instead of for effect. Somewhere in the 3 years of this curse, I forgot how to be genuine. I'm not sure the real me even exists anymore under all the jokes and deflection." Kieran's gruff voice rumbled from the doorway. "I broke a man's arm last week for disrespecting Ash. Snapped it like kindling, feeling a sense of satisfaction in the process. The violence in me scares even me sometimes. I worry that whoever you choose will eventually see that darkness and regret the decision." Roman's analytical tone carried unexpected emotion. "I have 17 journals filled with failed research, 17 chronicles of my inadequacy. I keep them as punishment, as a reminder that my intellect means nothing if I can't save the people I love. You're our salvation because I couldn't be." Ash's whisper was last, and most devastating. "I can feel all of you falling for her already. Different flavors of attraction, different types of want, but it's there in all 6 of you. And I feel it magnified through the bond until I can't tell if what I feel for her is mine or just an echo of yours. I don't know if I'm capable of wanting anything that's purely my own anymore." The confession settled over the room like snowfall, soft and covering everything. Alara felt tears slip down her temples, absorbing into the pillow beneath her head. They were all so broken. 7 different types of wounds, and she was supposed to choose which one to heal while leaving the others to suffer. "Something true from me then," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to choose. I've spent my whole life being overlooked, the one who's never been chosen. Now I have to do the choosing, and I'm terrified of getting it wrong, of hurting people who've already been hurt enough, of making the witch's revenge complete by choosing poorly." She paused, gathering courage. "But I'm also angry. Angry at the witch for creating this nightmare. Angry at my father for selling me into it. Angry at the curse for taking choice away from all of us. And underneath the fear and the anger, there's this tiny, treacherous spark of hope that maybe, somehow, the next 27 days will show me an answer I can live with." Demon's hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers threading through hers with surprising gentleness. "Then we have 27 days to show you who we really are. Not the cursed princes, not the alpha heirs, just 7 men hoping to be seen for ourselves." Through the bond, Alara felt a sense of agreement ripple through all of them. 27 days. Less than a month to make an impossible decision. But maybe, if she was brave enough to really look, really see them beyond the curse and the obligation and the magical bonds, perhaps she'd find something worth choosing. Or maybe she'd find 7 different ways to break her own heart. Sleep finally claimed her, pulling her down into darkness that was blessedly free of memory sharing this time. The bonds had stabilized enough that her dreams were her own again. She dreamed of a forest with 7 paths, each leading to a different future. In the dream, she stood at the center, trying to see where each path led, but they all curved away into mist and uncertainty. A voice whispered through the trees, female and ancient and bitter. Choose wrong and the curse twists deeper. Choose right and you save them all. But how will you know which is which until it's too late? Alara woke with dawn light filtering through the windows, the voice still echoing in her mind. Around her, 7 brothers slept in their various positions, exhaustion finally claiming even Demon's vigilant watch. She studied their faces in the soft morning light. Demon, with his harsh beauty, softened by sleep. Caspian's cynical mask is absent, revealing vulnerability underneath. Theo's gentle features were peaceful for once. Lucian, without his performative smile, looked younger and more lost. Kieran's scarred face relaxed, the rage dormant. Roman is still clutching his journal even in sleep. And Ash, ethereal and fragile, his white hair catching the light like a halo. 7 men, 1 choice, 27 days remaining. Ilara took a shaky breath and whispered to the empty room, to herself, to whatever gods or fates might be listening. Show me the answer. Please. Show me how to choose without destroying us all. The bond hummed softly in her chest, connecting her to 7 sleeping souls, and she felt the weight of their lives pressing against her heart. The curse had brought them together, but what would pull them apart? And when the moment came to decide finally, would she have the courage to choose her own happiness as Mira had urged? Or would she sacrifice herself one more time, picking whichever brother seemed to need her most, rather than want her most? 27 days to figure out the difference between need and want, between obligation and desire, between the choice that saved them and the choice that saved her. Outside, the manor was beginning to wake. She could hear servants moving in distant hallways, the sounds of a household stirring to life. Her new life. For better or worse, this was her reality now. 7 husbands bound by magic and a curse, 1 month to decide which one would claim her fully, and the terrible, secret knowledge that part of her was already starting to feel something for each of them. Different flavors of attraction that the bond made impossible to hide. Demon stirred first, his warrior's instincts pulling him from sleep the moment Alara's breathing pattern changed. His golden eyes found hers immediately, and through the bond, she felt his concern mixed with something warmer. Relief that she'd survived the night. Pleasure at being the first thing she saw upon waking. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly, careful not to wake the others yet. Alara considered the question honestly. Her head ached slightly. Her body felt heavy with exhaustion that sleep hadn't quite erased, and her chest carried the constant pressure of 7 additional consciousnesses. But underneath all that, she felt something unexpected. Curiosity. "Like I've been hit by a stampeding elk," she admitted, remembering Lucian's words from yesterday. "But alive, still myself. That's more than I expected after last night." Demon's smile was slight but genuine, transforming his harsh features into something almost approachable. "You're stronger than you know. Most people would have shattered under that level of bond intensity. You bent, but you didn't break." Through the bond, she felt his admiration, his respect for her resilience. It warmed something inside her that had been cold for a very long time. The others began to wake, drawn by the conversation, or simply by the bond's awareness that Alara was conscious. One by one, they stirred, stretched, and oriented themselves to the new day, and the strange woman at the center of their lives. "Morning," Lucian said, his performance smile already sliding into place despite the early hour. But Alara could feel through the bond that he was genuinely glad to see her well. The smile was genuine this time, even if the exaggeration of it was a habit. "We should establish ground rules," Roman said, already reaching for his journal. "If we're going to do this properly, give Alara a fair chance to know each of us, we need structure." "A schedule," Caspian groaned. "Leave it to you to turn courtship into a research project." But through the bond, Alara felt his relief at having structure. having control over at least one aspect of this chaotic situation. I think structure makes sense, Alara said, surprising herself by agreeing with Roman. 27 days isn't much time. If I'm supposed to choose based on actually knowing you rather than random chance, I need dedicated time with each of you. Theo nodded thoughtfully. One-on-one time, but also group time. You need to see how we interact, how we are together. The bond means we're all connected permanently. Whoever you choose will still be bound to his brothers. You need to know the whole family dynamic. Kieran grunted his agreement from the doorway. Can't choose the best brother if you only see us in isolation. Need to see us in context. The practicality of the discussion was almost absurd. Scheduling time to fall in love, or at least to make an informed decision about who to bind herself to for eternity. But what about this situation wasn't absurd? So we divide the days, Roman said, already making notes. 3 days with each brother individually, rotating through all 7. That's 21 days. The remaining 6 days you spend with all of us together, observing group dynamics and making your final assessment. Ash spoke quietly from his position on the floor. And what happens if she doesn't choose by day 28? What if she needs more time? The question hung heavy in the air. Demon's expression darkened. The curse doesn't give us more time. Day 29, the bonds start to decay. We either complete the claiming or we all start dying, slowly and painfully, over the course of about 3 weeks. Alara's stomach dropped. 3 weeks? If I don't choose, you have 3 weeks to live? Caspian's voice was harsh. Now you understand the stakes. This isn't a game. This isn't a romantic adventure. This is life or death with a particular deadline. The weight of it pressed down on Alara until she could barely breathe. 27 days to choose which man lived fully, and which 6 suffered eternally. And if she failed to choose at all, they all died together, bound by the curse until the very end. I'll choose, she said, her voice shaking but determined. I don't know how yet, don't know who, but I promise I'll choose. I won't let you die because I was too afraid to decide. Through the bond, she felt their reaction to her promise. Gratitude, fear, hope, and something else. The beginning of trust. She was a stranger forced into their lives by circumstances beyond their control, yet she chose to take this seriously and try. Then let's begin, Demon said, rising from his chair and offering Alara his hand. 27 days to break a curse, and maybe, if we're fortunate, to find something real underneath all the magic and obligation. Alara took his hand, let him pull her to her feet, and face 7 brothers, who were now 7 husbands, who would become 6 heartbreaks and 1 eternal bond. The curse had brought them together, but what happened next was up to all of them. Day 1, she said softly, looking at each of them in turn. Who's first?